Aloha everyone, my name is Kamakana Gilman. This is my senior capstone proposal presentation. The topic I'll be talking about today is the relationship between media and the evolution of college football recruitment. Um, so the overview of who I am, my name, as I said before, is Kamakana Gilman. I'm from the North Shore of Oahu in a little town called Laie. I graduated high school from Kahuku High School, and intermediate in 2022. And around the same time, I received my AA in liberal arts from WCC in 2022 as well. I was able to get into the early college program. So from freshman year in high school to senior year, I also got my AA at the same time. Um, I'm a transfer student from WCC, and I'm currently enrolled here at University of Hawaii West Oahu. The degree I am getting is creative media, but focus in general media. All right, so throughout this presentation, I'll be talking about my thesis statement, my objective, and all the research I have conducted, um, my senior capstone plans, practicum, and the significance of my presentation and the research that has made everything come about. This is my thesis statement. So, throughout the football recruiting system, the impact of social and digital media on student athletes in their recruiting process affects self-promotion, branding, scholarships, and name, image, likeness, known as NIL agreements, while also analyzing the cognitive pressures student athletes face as a result of life decisions made during these formative years. Um, so my objective and the rationale of research conducted. Why is this topic important? So, with the constant growth and evolution of the football recruiting system, I think it's important to acknowledge the process of the system while also understanding how it can affect both the recruiters and recruits. Um, because of this landscape being s- continuously changing and the evolution of it is can be tricky sometimes for a young athlete. I think by reframing the recruitment as both a business and a developmental process, we can better guide the future athletes or football players towards a stronger understanding of the recruiting process as an opportunity to gain insight on self-branding, NIL endorsements, and real-life decision making. So for my senior capstone plans, I was able to get an internship. Um, Last semester, I also took this class, and it's the same internship, but they also just put me in different positions so that I can still work with them. Um, and I am an internship as a social media slash marketing group, and I'm also an assist producer as well. Um, Intern for this documentary film called Oval. This film entails the legacy of a native Hawaiian football player and his family, coming from the perspective of the father, oldest, middle, and youngest sons. Um, for one of the marketing campaigns that we have created, we are going to be producing a podcast series on the details of the football industry on top of the documentary itself. Hosted by one of the main leads of the film, we will dive into the details of the recruitment process and why it's detrimental for young athletes to understand this industry's constant evolution. Here I have three of the topics that we'll be talking about throughout this podcast series. There's obviously more, but these are the main ones that I personally am going to be producing and will be working hand in hand with. Um, So NIL endorsements and agreements, how the recruiting process has changed and how to be recruited, self-promotion and branding throughout the recruiting process. So yeah, these will be in different episodes. So the significance oh, sorry, of this. project and why I think it's super important to talk about this topic is to understand and acknowledge the recruiting system and how it has changed. Um, Dissecting the NIL agreement and endorsement process as the NIL is also new and continuing to grow. Um, a lot of information about this NIL is has not been talked about enough, at least for young athletes and young athletes' parents. To also help guide student athletes through the recruiting process in relations to self-promotion and branding. I am aware that throughout my deliverable and this whole research process in general, um, I will have to run into some future implications. But I am prepared for those type of problems, so I'm trying to set this out now. Um, that I will possibly have to go out and find the right guests to interview. So that entails getting professional athletes, NFL players, and that's just the process of getting the right people so that we can talk about these conversations and these topics so freely. Um, and then also an importance that I want to bring about more is incorporating both coach slash recruiter perspective as well as talking for the student athlete perspective as well, because by sharing both those two perspectives in this type of industry, we can both bridge a gap of understanding and um, make it easier for the next generation of athletes to go into this industry. So for the data, why a podcast exactly? Personally, I have throughout my research process, I was able to talk to professional athletes and recruiters, ex-college coaches, and I just found that it was a lot more easier to get information and get real time knowledge from them as I was interviewing them. So in my thought process, I think a podcast would probably be best because it also serves as a um, raw source of research as well. So that includes direct communication with special guests, which can help with talking and bridging that gap between a professional level, recruiter level, and as a young athlete level as well. Um, it can provide and create intimate conversations that allow flow-like knowledge instead of a scripted information that we may see on television or social media. Um, Empower young athletes to seek out guidance and mentorship as an athlete and as a brand. Um, and the podcast can also be a space for knowledge through the NIL and recruitment landscape while it is happening as we speak. So it's important to get up to date information so we can better understand what's really going on behind the scenes. Um, so as a target audience, I believe this topic and this conversation needs to be had with everyone, especially if you're in the entertainment industry, but specifically sports media. Some of the main target audience groups and personas that I want to talk about or talk towards or hope that I can share this information with is young athletes and football players, college football recruiters and or coaches, and the student athletes' parents and guardians, because I think it's as from what I've heard so far and talked with as I talked with personal or professional football players that they had to go throughout this whole system without knowing um, a lot of details, as well as their parents also not knowing. So I think this could be a great help. This podcast could be a great help for the parents as well. My proposed solution, sorry, my proposed solution, for this deliverable or my podcast in general is to help understand real life decisions or help these young athletes understand real life decision making that they must adopt to in order to gain collegiate or professional opportunities in the future. Help guide the next generation of student athletes to better understand the recruiting system, and by also gaining skills of self-promotion and branding as they step into the recruiting landscape. For my deliverable and the preparation that I'll have to go through as I am making or creating this podcast series. Oh, the preparation I will be conducting and creating the set list and introduction scripts for host. And before that, I'll also be sourcing out the guest interviews who I'll be talking to, setting shoot dates, and just all the management portion behind filming in general. And then during production, I'll be setting up the set, checking audio and visual equipment, monitor audio during filming, and guiding hosts and guests through a time schedule clock so they don't go over. Um, the post production, I'll be editing and revising podcast episodes and plan release dates for a marketing campaign that can better fit the overall film scheduled release date. So the deliverable in general, we have created a name, and the name will be called The Athlete Unknown. So far we have just jot down a couple meetings and we jot down some information of what we can talk about on the podcast. And as of right now, the first podcast will be about the evolution of the recruiting process and how to get recruited. So that entails self-promotion and branding and the business aspect of the recruiting process for a young athlete and just the broad knowledge of what they might be stepping into if they choose to go forward with this industry. The second episode will be talking about the NIL endorsements and the business mindset that comes with it. I plan to have the perspective of college athletes that has partaken in the NIL and endorsements and agreements in whatever collegiate program that they've gone to, but also having the opposite perspective of an athlete that went through college and is playing professional football, but they weren't able to partake in any of the NIL endorsements. Um, and I think that'll be a great balance for the viewers or for the target audience to understand the impact that the NIL endorsements and the agreements policy has caused on the recruiting system in general. The third episode will be talking about the mental pressure student athletes must endure through um, to play on the highest level. This one, I'm gonna try and find some special guests that can help relay this message with empathy and knowledge. So the main purpose of this podcast is to not only serve as a marketing campaign or segment for the documentary, but to also share the importance of the recruiting side of football and understanding the recruiting side of football and cover the ins and outs of the NIL and to show empathy for young athletes as they choose to embark into this new journey. In conclusion, the podcast and all the research I've gone through and studied has helped me understand the importance it is to to speak for the young athletes that are choosing to go into this industry. And I believe that my podcast can help bridge that gap for athletes, college recruiters, and athletes' parents as well. All right, mahalo. Thank you so much for all your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.